amiguitos, in this video I'm gonna be answering a very popular question about cost of living in Merida, Mexico. All right, so the question that I'm going to be answering today is Merida, Mexico, or is Mexico in general cheap? All right, so to answer your question, the answer is yes, it is cheaper, not cheap, because cheap is relative depending on how much money you earn and what currency that money is in. All right, for the average person here, they don't see life as being cheap because this is their life. This is the country they're born in. This is the salary that they are earning. So to them, they don't see anything as cheap. As a matter of fact, things are getting expensive for them, and just like everywhere else in this world. All right, so in this video I will be going over some things that are cheaper here and some things that are actually surprisingly more expensive here in Merida, Mexico. Now, before I get into differentiating between things that are cheaper and things that are more expensive, I first want to go through the GDP, or just the currency here. So one thing we have to understand is that $1, one US dollar, is not the same as one Mexican peso. Okay, one US dollar is not the same because right now one US dollar is worth about 16.50 pesos. Let's say about 17 pesos. Okay, so what one US dollar can get in the US is different from what 16 Mexican pesos can get you here in Mexico. So that's one thing we have to factor in. Also, the average salary or the minimum wage in different parts of the US is different when compared to the minimum wage. Here in Yucatan is one of the least paid states in terms of salary, right? There are 3 states here in Mexico that I heard they don't earn as much, and that's Chiapas, Yucatan, and I believe Tabasco or somewhere, but Chiapas and Yucatan are one of the states whereby people don't earn as much. They actually earn the least when compared to their colleagues in other parts of the country. All right, and that also contributes to the lower cost of living here in Yucatan in comparison to other parts of the country, because the average salary will determine the average cost of living. All right, just like anywhere else in the world, right? Average rent in, let's say, New York City, right, is not the same as average rent in Kansas City, because the salary somebody earns in Kansas City is not the same as the salary somebody would earn in New York City. So it's pretty much the same. All right, so that's what you have to consider. One US dollar is not the same as one Mexican peso. The average salary of somebody here in Mexico is not the same as the average salary as somebody in the US. For example, right, if somebody works, for example, here in a restaurant, the average salary is about 6,000 pesos. Now, there's a restaurant on my street here. They put out a sign, right, that they were looking for people, and the weekly salary says 1,600 pesos. 1,600 pesos, right? Meaning that every month the average salary is about 6,400 pesos for a waiter. Now they're gonna earn a little bit of tips, which will boost that salary even higher. But that's pretty much it. 6,600 pesos. It's a little bit over $350, right? Now, who earns $350 in the US? Working full time, Monday to Saturday. Actually, they work like 6 days a week here, right? So that's one thing you have to keep in mind when thinking about, the fact that everything is so cheap. That's because everything is so cheap because the minimum wage here is about 25% of what a minimum wage would be wherever it is you're coming from in the state. This video will target mostly Americans because that is the majority of people who are moving down here and also who are doing some research. For me, because I used to live in Canada, so I usually just think about, okay, how much would this cost me in Canada? How much would this cost me in Canadian dollars? But because in the past few years I've been thinking in US dollars, because that's usually when you're buying something, they usually convert it on your behalf into US dollars. So that's the currency I've been thinking in for the past 6 years or so. So that's another thing to factor in, the average minimum wage. It's not the same as the average minimum wage, right? What a medical doctor earns here is not the same as what a medical doctor anywhere in the States earns. What, let's say, an engineer, what they earn here, it's not the same. So you have to factor that in when thinking about, oh, everything is so cheap here, right? Because it's just an insult. The same way that when a Mexican person moved to the US, they're gonna think everything is expensive, right? Because they're gonna be converting everything into Mexican pesos. Like, what? That apple costs like $2. That's like 30 Mexican pesos. In Mexico, I can get it for 5 pesos. So it's gonna be the same thing when they move from Mexico to the US. They're gonna be thinking, wow, everything is so expensive, right? The same way you guys are moving here with your strong US dollars, you think everything is so cheap. When they move to the US with the weaker Mexican pesos, they're gonna think everything is more expensive. So, put it into perspective. Now let's get into what's actually cheaper here in Mexico, right? The main thing will be housing. It could be buying a house, buying a land, buying a property, or renting. That's gonna be cheaper in most part. There are some rents that actually cost about the same as what it'll cost. For example, coming from Edmonton, Alberta, or even, some parts of Ontario, right? Some places are just ridiculously high because the clientele they are after is like clientele that aren't earning Mexican pesos. And if they are earning Mexican pesos, they're probably earning the equivalent of US dollars. But for the most part, like 90% of the rent here will be significantly cheaper than where you're coming from, right? So I did a couple videos about how to find affordable rent under $1,000 and under $600, right? Somebody might look at that and think, wow, a beautiful house, 3-bedroom house, 3-bathroom house, a bathroom, a big yard, I'm only paying $1,000. Wow, in the US, and again, US is such a huge country, they might be like, wow, in Houston, this property will easily cost me $2,000. This property will easily cost me almost $3,000. But you're in Merida, Yucatan. You're not in Houston, Texas. You're not in New York City. You're not in LA. You're in Merida, Yucatan. So think about that, because this is one of the ways that these agencies and also landlords are increasing prices, because you're coming down here, you're thinking, whoa, everything is so cheap. Back in my country, this will cost me 2 times more, 3 times more. And they're thinking, oh, really? Okay. The next guy that shows up, we're just going to jack up the price by 20% higher, 30% higher. And now they've priced out the locals out of the market, because you're saying, wow, this is so cheap, you should charge more. And then they go, oh yeah, we will charge more. So make sure that when somebody gives you a price, do not automatically convert it into US dollars, and do not try to tell them it's too cheap and they should charge more, because that's just an insult. Even to us living down here. Because I moved down here to spend pesos, not to spend US dollars. If I wanted to spend US dollars, I would move to the US or countries where US dollars is their national currency. Aside from housing, what's also going to be cheaper will be utilities, right? Your gas for cooking gas, your electricity bill, depending on where you live and depending on how long or how much electricity you actually use. Some people here in Merida, it's been really hot, so they leave their AC on 24/7. Now your electricity bill will be ridiculously high, especially if you're gonna be living in a house. 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, plus the living room, the kitchen, everything. That's like a huge amount of space to cool down, right? Your electricity bill might actually be more expensive, but for the most part, your electricity bill will be significantly lower than what's being charged in the US. So also your cell phone bill, internet. Again, internet, it depends on what package you have chosen. For me, my internet bill, it's about 250 pesos. No, it's actually, yeah, my internet bill is 450 pesos, which is maybe, it's over $25 USD, right? For just a basic wireless internet plan. So it all depends on what package you have chosen for yourself. Another thing that's going to be ridiculously cheaper here will be food, especially food grown here in Mexico, not imported food. Imported food, that's something else. But locally grown food like vegetables, fruits, beans, stuff that are locally made or packaged here will be generally cheaper. All right, avocados, bananas, plantains, mangoes, those things will be significantly cheaper here because they were locally grown and harvested here. And remember that labor here is cheaper, not cheap, right? So food will be cheaper. By food, I mean grocery store food, not restaurant food. Restaurant food, that's another thing I will touch upon very soon. The next thing that is cheaper here will be labor or services. So paying somebody to do something. It could be your pool guy, your nanny, your babysitter, your gardener, your cook, your chef, your chiropractor, your dentist, your massage therapist, your hairstylist, nail technician, pretty much labor. Because again, remember, average salary here is significantly less here in Mexico compared to, for example, US. I'm only going to use that country as an example, not other countries, right? So take that into consideration. And one issue that I have with a lot of Americans coming down here is sometimes they also price people like myself out of the market. For example, there was a guy who cut hair. This man is a Cuban man and he knows how to cut black hair. And so a friend went to him, he cut our hair and it was very affordable. I think it was maybe 500 pesos, I can't remember. And then I went and he actually cut my hair. I was quite impressed. And then I recommended him, other people recommended him in a Facebook group. And then a few months later, this guy had ridiculously increased his price. And so fewer people went to him because now it's like, oh, actually now you're almost as expensive as like back home or as somewhere else. And I think the reason for that is because people were telling him, wow, you're so cheap, increase your price. And now he had priced a lot of us out of the market. So when somebody gives you the price, especially because they are seeing you like you're not a local, chances are they've probably increased that price a little bit. Because sometimes when we tell the locals, hey, this is how much I paid, they're looking at you like, you pay too much. But we're thinking, oh, actually, we got a really good deal, right? So they've already increased the price for you a little bit. Now, going to them and telling them, hey, it's too cheap, increase your price. Now, like, you've priced a lot of people out of that market, right? So one thing you have to remember is that, again, Mexico is in the US. Mexico is Mexico, the US is US. The same way that when a Mexican goes to the US and they need to get their hair done, and the hairstylist is telling them, okay, it'll cost you $50, $100. And they're thinking, well, back home in Mexico, this will easily cost me $10. The maximum I'll ever spend will be $25. You charging me $100 is just ridiculous. They're going to be like, well, that's the price, right? They're not going to lower the price just because you're coming with Mexican pesos. So you shouldn't make them increase their price just because you are coming with US dollars, right? So be respectful of people like myself who I've come down here to spend pesos. The next thing that will be cheaper here will be healthcare, especially for Americans coming down here. So healthcare, again, that relates to labor, right? It'll be significantly cheaper. Healthcare and also medicine. A lot of medicine here are cheaper here because, again, they are made here in Mexico. Going to the doctors, depending, it could be like 500 pesos, 1,000 pesos. It depends on where you go and what service you are asking for, right? To go to a chiropractor, for example, one time I was spending 500 pesos. If it was a chiropractor and a physiotherapist, maybe 800 pesos. My dentist for my braces, every visit will be like 350 pesos. Right now, guys, remember $1 it's less than 17. $1 is less than 17 pesos. So maybe I will put the conversion up there, but it's kind of tricky doing the conversion right in my head. So for the most part, it'll be less than 1,000 pesos to go see a medical professional. Sometimes you can actually pay for a medical professional to come to your house, right? To do their job. Sometimes I've heard of people get an X-ray done in their homes, from the comfort of their homes. Like the doctor will bring the X-ray machine in a case, in a box, perform the X-ray, take it to the lab, and then they give you your result. Sometimes they can take blood, right, from your home, from the comfort of your home, very affordable, and it's just for you, it's just affordable more than going somewhere else, right? Even though you're paying a little bit more, but it's still significantly cheaper compared to, for example, if you had to pay for somebody to come to your home, say in the US, right? So stuff like that, very affordable, and the professionalism, top notch. Well, I guess it depends on who you go to, right? Top notch. Here in Mexico, there is a pharmacy called Farmacia Similares, and they have like a mascot doctor called Dr. Simi, and they have like, they do consultations. Usually the consultations are performed by medical students. So 21, 22-year-olds will be your doctor for the day. And for a basic consultation could cost you as little as 50 pesos. I think they increased their price to like 55 pesos, which is like $3, right? Just to go to the doctors and be like, hey, my tummy hurts, my eye, whatever, and the doctor will be like, okay, so go get this test done, or go get this medicine, because sometimes you might need a prescription from a doctor to get, in order to get some medicine. So you might just go to that doctor, pay him 50 pesos, and then he writes you a prescription, or she tells you what to do. Very affordable. The next thing will be beauty. So I didn't mention that early on. Beauty, that relates to labor, right? So getting your nails done, your hair done, stuff like that. But it depends on where you go. For black hair, you might have to pay the same amount as what you paid in the US, or close to. Here in Merida, we don't have as many people who do hair. Some of them that I've heard about are mostly from the US, and so they are charging US dollars. Even when I went to Mexico City, I was referred to a couple hairstylists. Mind you, they are actually African. So one was Nigerian, the other one Ghanaian. And to get box braids done, one of them was charging 3,500 pesos. Other one was charging like 3,200 pesos. You bring your own hair, or they have the hair. I'm thinking, this is like 60% of what I pay in rent. And this is almost double what I paid for box braids just a few months ago in Toronto, Canada. Right? You guys are charging me double what I would normally pay in the US. Now this is Mexico, things are cheaper, your rent is cheaper. I think you have to go to their house. Your rent is cheaper, everything is cheaper, but you're charging me US equivalent because you're seeing me as a foreigner, even though obviously we're both Nigerians. But it depends on where you go. It depends on where you go. If you're gonna be getting another foreigner or another expat perform a service on you, they're gonna charge you what they charge back home, because they have bills to pay back home and right here, right? There is another girl, I think she's from the Dominican Republic, I don't know. 2 years ago, she was charging 2,000 pesos for braids, box braids, which I thought was still too expensive, because she lived in Calkel and apparently her rent was about 5,000 pesos. So I'm like, she only needs like 3 customers in the whole month just to pay her rent. So I'm like, that is still ridiculously expensive. But it depends. But if it's a local person, a local Mexican, you know, and you want to go get your hair done, they're going to charge you what they charge everyone else. Let's hope so. As long as the prices are published. If they have published prices on the wall, you know, okay, I'm getting what everyone else is getting. Getting your nails done, I mean, it doesn't matter what color, what gender, or whatever. It's, you know, the same price that they give to everybody. So to get nails done, I used to get my nails done, but I had to stop because my nails were thinning out. To get my nails done, I usually go to a place in Centro called Plaza de la Mujer, and it's about maybe 250 pesos for gel. For acrylic, maybe 300 pesos, right? So again, about $15 US, very affordable, right? So beauty, those things are cheaper here, because remember, labor is cheaper here. And the next thing will be education. Education will be like, for example, if you're going to be moving down here with your family, with your kids, you want to enroll them in a school, private school. Even though they cost more, they have different levels, different tiers of schools, right? Private average, private low, private. It depends on your budget. Very fancy school, I mean, they have a budget for everybody. That will be cheaper than where you're coming from in the state. You want to get a piano teacher, a violin teacher. You want to learn how to play volleyball, soccer lessons, swimming lessons, painting lessons, singing classes. Those things will be affordable. You want to take yoga classes, Pilates, go to the gym, something like that, right? Very cheap. Salsa lessons. I took salsa class, it's about 2 classes a week, 1 hour each, so like 8 hours every month, and it costs 450 pesos. So that's about $25 más o menos per month. I was talking to some ladies last night, and they signed up for reformed Pilates. Yeah, reformed Pilates, and they pay 100 pesos per class, and each class lasts about 50 minutes, right? 100 pesos, 50 minutes, right? So I mean, that's like $6 or something per hour, let's just say. And they were saying that in the US, or at least in LA where she was coming from, it cost about $45 per class. So you have to take all those things into consideration. It's not cheaper, but it's only cheaper here because labor is cheaper. And the reason that labor is cheaper is because salary is cheaper, right? So you charging somebody like $30 for a lesson when you know obviously they only made $30 that whole day. They're not gonna pay you $30 for just 1 hour when they had to work like 5-6 hours to earn that $30. And the last thing to wrap this section up, even though I mean there are so many things that are way cheaper here, so many things, but there's no time for this video. The last thing that I want to mention here that's cheaper here in Mexico will be anything made in Mexico. I touched upon that briefly when I mentioned about food, labor. Anything that's locally made here, packaged here, produced here will be generally cheaper. Labor, services, even some products will be generally cheaper here. Furnitures, accessories, cheaper. So you have to put that into consideration, right? The same way, again, $1 US is not the same as $1 Mexican pesos. And that's the reason why a lot of US companies will outsource labor to countries like Mexico and so on and so forth, because they can get way more for their dollar, right? What they're gonna pay somebody $10 an hour for, let's say somewhere in the US, let's say Houston, they can hire 3 people, let's say for example here in Mexico, to do the same job, right? So what you're gonna pay one person to do $10 an hour, you can pay 3 people, right? The equivalent of $10. So let's say $3 each per person, and you get way more, right? So let's say in the US you can only hire 1 person because that's what you can afford your budget. Here, let's say in Mexico, you can hire 3 people, meaning you can produce way more, make more, and just, you know, be well off, right? So you have to think about that, right? Most people are not business minded, so they can't actually see the differences, but I think differently. All right, so the next part now will be what's surprisingly more expensive. And I'm saying surprisingly because people think everything is cheaper. They think everything is cheap in Mexico, but no, some things are ridiculously more expensive. It doesn't matter if you're earning US dollars, Mexican pesos, I mean, it just costs more. This part will be very quick because everything will be summarized into one, which is that anything that wasn't made in Mexico or by a Mexican will be more expensive, meaning that anything imported into Mexico will be more expensive. It doesn't matter where it's coming from because import taxes here in Mexico is just unbelievably higher. Many countries that I've actually lived in, China, Colombia, anything imported, I'm like, nope, extremely expensive. What do I mean by anything imported? Number one would be electronics. Cell phones, laptops, TVs, dishwashers, fridges, deep freezers, drones, cameras, any electronics imported into the country will be more expensive than what you would pay for in the US. For example, iPhones are just, oh my God, expensive. I mean, somebody's 1 month salary for just a phone. In the US, maybe like an iPhone 13, iPhone 14, whatever, maybe $1,000 US. If you're earning, let's say, $3,000-$4,000 a month, that's like 1 week's pay, and then that pays for your phone. But here, the same iPhone 13 could cost maybe like 20,000 pesos or 18,000 pesos. And like, how many people are earning that much in a month? Let's say you work at a call center, maybe you earn 15,000 pesos or whatever, right? That's like your whole month salary on a phone. And so that's why you go to like any iPhone shops or any Apple retailer stores here in Mexico, especially Merida, they're usually empty. Like, there's nobody there. Sometimes they might have just 1 customer or 2 customers and like 10 staffs, right? 10 staff members. That's because, well, how many people can afford an iPhone? And the thing is, here, people don't have access to credit. They have credit cards, like I do have a credit card from a Mexican bank. They give loans and such, but credit cards aren't heavily used here because the interest rate is just out of this world, right? So people don't have credit, unlike the US where somebody might have 10 credit cards, 5 credit cards, 20 credit cards, I heard in some cases, right? So people don't have access to credit here, right? So electronics will be very expensive, very expensive. That's one thing. Number two, cars. Cars are so expensive. They cost about 30-35% more and with less features. And I know this because when I was going to buy my car, I checked out all of the car dealerships: Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Kia, even I checked out BMW, even though I knew, obviously it's out of my budget. So I went to all of these agencies, Hyundai, I went to all of these agencies, and I also checked out their prices online, and then I converted that into what it normally costs. Like, let's say in Canada, I went to, let's say, Toyota.mx, Toyota.ca. I was like, the math ain't mathing. And I checked out the features on one car, checked out features on another car that's in Canada. It's like, Canadian cars, they come with more features, less expensive. Mexican cars, less features, way more expensive. And remember, people don't earn as much here. So when you actually, factor in like currency exchange, how much people earn, what have you, a car here is valued at, let's say, 10 times more than what a car in Canada is valued. I'm talking about a brand new car can cost about 300,000 pesos, right? That's like a whole year salary. Because if you're only earning about 20,000 pesos or so in a month, that's like your whole year salary on a car. Now, you want to buy the same car, a brand new car, let's say in Canada, it's about $30,000, $40,000 or so. Most people earn way more than that. And also you have access to credit, you can pay bit by bit. Here as well, a lot of the car agencies as well, you can get credit through them or directly through your bank, and you pay less in interest, like 5% interest rate, which is still very high, right? So within 5 years you can pay off your car or just get a used car. But cars are expensive here in Mexico. Okay, so again, not everything is cheaper, because you're thinking, wait, for the same car in the US I get way more features, I actually spend way less, and I'm talking about US dollars. Okay, so keep that in mind. And yeah, so cars, motorbikes, even bicycles, because bicycles here cost like 2,000 pesos, like a basic bike like what I have. It doesn't have any gear, nothing. I mean, in the US you can buy a bike for less than $100 because there's always sales going on. The thing here is that because it costs all these businesses so much money to bring stuff in, they rarely have sales, barely have sales. At least like you can look forward to like clearance sales, end of the season sales, whatever, and then you can get things at a significantly cheaper price. Here, not so much. And another thing that's surprisingly more expensive here is gasoline. Gasoline here right now, it's about 23 to 25 pesos per liter, and that's obviously more than $1 per liter, right? For me, I'm thinking about, I was just in Canada a few months ago. 1 liter in Ontario was about $1.38 in Mexican pesos. That's maybe 16 pesos, 17 pesos, thereabouts, right? So gas is more expensive here. So cars more expensive. The gas you have to put into the car more expensive. Even though they have oil refinery here in Mexico, we have one in Campeche, which is very close to Yucatan. And another thing that's surprisingly more expensive here will be clothing. Clothing, shoes, accessories. Even Mexicans who live really close to the border will go to the US to do their shopping, clothes, shoes, and then they come down to the States. Or Mexicans with businesses, they go to the US, they buy in bulk, they come down and they sell at the tianguis or what have you. Clothes are more expensive. Good quality clothes, of course, brand name clothes. By brand name, I mean American brand name clothes. Accessories, shoes will be more expensive because remember, they had to import them in at whatever US dollars that they had to spend on it, and then they had to spend import taxes on it, and then now add their own profit margin. So by the time you factor everything, it's like it's costing you like 40% more, 50% more than what you pay for the same thing, or even better quality. You have more options, more styles, more features, let's say in the US. So I usually don't buy clothes, shoes here. I usually wait till I go back to Canada to buy stuff. Unless I see something really nice on sale, then I'll buy it. Most times I don't really shop for clothes because they're just way more expensive. And finally, to wrap things up, I talked about, for things that are cheaper, I said food grown and produced here. What's more expensive will be imported food, especially chocolates. Chocolates in Mexico, such a luxury. Chocolates, yeah, like Ferrero Rocher, Cadbury chocolates, Hershey's. Oh, such a luxury, such a luxury. And to me, I'm thinking, why though? Because they have Walmart here, right? Walmart, and in most cases, these things came in a truck. So it's not like they had to fly them in from like China or, from the UK or from Australia. It's like they came in a truck, but they're just way more expensive. And I'm thinking these companies could have made those chocolates here in Mexico, so they only have to package them, package them, and then it'll be much cheaper. But chocolates are very expensive, and anything imported in general will be more expensive, which makes sense because that's like a luxury item. It's something that you wanted, not something that you actually need, right? But chocolates, yes, you best believe it is way more expensive. Right? Because again, I said food, it's only cheap here if it was made here, produced, packaged, assembled here. Also, some things like furnitures are also more expensive. Furnitures, watches, luxury brands, perfume. Perfumes are also expensive, especially again imported perfumes from US brands or European brands, also very expensive. So my question now is Mexico actually cheap, or is it cheaper? When you factor all this in, I would say yes, Mexico will be cheaper for a US citizen or for somebody coming in with a stronger currency if you're only gonna be living within your means and you only use things that you need. So stuff like a car, you don't need a car, you can just get an Uber or walk to places, take the bus. You don't have to worry about putting gasoline in your car. Also, when it comes to the luxury items that I mentioned, you don't need chocolates. Chocolates are just luxuries, right? Clothing, you can just wear the same clothes that you came in with, or you can go to the local tianguis to buy like secondhand clothing, or just wait for something to go on sale. Or maybe when you know somebody coming into the country, you can just ask them to buy some more clothes for you. And in terms of electronics, you can just use whatever it is that you have. You don't need the latest iPhone 15, iPhone 17, iPhone 18. You don't need the latest of the latest. TVs, stuff like that, you can always buy them used from somebody moving away, and then you save significantly more, right? Significantly more. But if you're going to be living within your means, you rent an affordable apartment, you pay the staff what they actually ask you for. You're not paying them more, because I've seen in some Facebook groups where people talk about taking advantage of the locals. Even though this is the fee they gave me, I ask you how much you charge, you tell me 300 pesos. I pay you 300 pesos and your local Mexicans are telling me that I'm actually taking advantage of you, even though for a regular person you probably tell them it's 200 pesos, but you've already charged me more. But your local Mexicans are telling me I'm taking advantage of you, because back where I'm coming from, I'll pay that person like 1,000 pesos. But the thing is, I'm not where I'm coming from. I'm here in your country, and I'm here giving back, providing jobs, and also boosting the economy by me being here. So when somebody tells you their price, pay them that. Do not overpay them, because now you're increasing the cost of living without even knowing it. You live within your means, you cook at home. Even going out to restaurants could be cheaper, or could be the same amount, or could be more. It depends on where you go and what you're going to be ordering, right? So that's why that's not really factored in. But going to the gym, stuff like that, just living within your means, you can significantly live well and thrive well here. Now, I'll probably do another video about how much you need realistically to live well, because I've seen some videos where people talk about you need minimum $2,000 to live well. Some people are like, you can actually live under $1,000, you can live under $600. I mean, rent, food, everything, right? So I'll probably do another video about that. How much do you need realistically? Now, you have to remember that everybody's budget, everybody's lifestyle is different. Me, as a single female, my lifestyle is different from somebody coming in with their family, from somebody coming in who is used to a particular luxury or a particular lifestyle, right? We all have different lifestyles, different experiences. So what I can live on could be somebody's like, no, sorry, that's luxury. oh no, that's not enough for me, right? So I'll probably do another video on that. All right, if you have any other question about living in Mexico, cost of living, what's cheaper, what's more expensive, what's average, what's the same price, what's fair, then leave it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to get to it. All right, ciao.